in your business, whether it's marketing, whether it's product, whether it's distribution, leadership and culture and strategy, trying to see which of those problems or those operational areas where if you were to get support from somebody who's has the muscles will unlock the most growth for you.
The thing that I realized is that we might take for granted, and even back in my years in marketing was, and you would beg clients for this, is like feedback, making sure that as much as possible you get reviews from people.
In the context of this particular business, what people were really connecting to in the storytelling was, one, they were just interested in kind of the process. So, what does it take to make like a blueberry samosa? They were interested in the co-creation element of it, and also in kind of the historical stuff, the ways in which samosa has become a container of identity.
So first things first is to understand the difference between growth and scale. Yeah, because those are two different terminologies. What does it mean to grow and what does it mean to scale? And I think we can hear from each one of you what you feel is the difference between growth and scale. Maybe we can start with Alea.
Oh no. I'm going to caveat this by saying I'm an artist, fundamentally, who got into business because of the hustle, and also because of trying to learn and figure out what it's like to build a business around the work that I want to make in the world and the work that we want to make as the co-founders. And so a lot of these terms are terms that I'm new to, and so I'm caveating that. For me, when I think about scale, I think about what it looks like to increase your ability to reach the market, whether it's streamlining, increasing the amount of product you can put out there, increasing your reach without necessarily increasing the size of your team or the resources that you're putting into it, or your overheads or the capital that you're putting into it. So that's what I think about when I think about scale. When I think about growth, I think about money. When I think about scale, I think about efficiency. So those are the two things that kind of pop into my head.
Okay. What is it like for you, Zain? Difference between scale and growth?
I think that's pretty much it. And for us, for me, scaling basically means increasing profitability without necessarily increasing the investment or the cost and the overheads. Yeah. So I'd say she captured it really well. Yeah.
Mark, you worked with a lot of companies helping them scale or grow. You feel something we are missing out on, trying to differentiate between scale and growth?
I think for me, I'd say growth is incremental. So where it's like you're doing better than yesterday, than last month, than last year, and scale is exponential. So it's like really you are 5xing, 6xing, and the likes. So that's what I'd call the difference between the two. Yeah.
And for the purpose of this conversation, then you'll be focusing more on scale, right? So why scale? Why scale, Mark? As an SME, why scale? Why?
I think that's an interesting question. And I wouldn't say there's a right or wrong answer because sometimes it can find you by accident. But I think for me, if I was an entrepreneur and I want to scale, I'd probably go back to the reason why I started the business in the first place. So was the problem big enough that I'd want to solve it not only for myself, but for more people like me who've experienced that problem. And definitely, if the problem is big enough, then it means as an entrepreneur or as a founder, I have to do everything I can to ensure that I'm able to solve it for as many people as possible. So I'd say it almost ties into values and the vision that I had when I was starting the business in the first place. Yeah.
So for you, it's more of, okay, I've reached this level of growth. So it's not just about me now. There's got to be other people who get to benefit, and hence the need to scale. All right. What have you, Zain? Would it be important for an SME like yourself to scale?
Yeah, because one, tied to our vision, it was, even when we were just online, we were called Play Academy Africa, the goal was always to spread beyond our borders. So for sure, to answer the problem or to meet the needs of the audience that we already have. So the ones who say, like for our Playpod, where we have kids who are coming when we are at capacity, it makes sense to scale because our Playpod is one of the vehicles with which we use to solve these problems. The second one is money. Like if you want to grow your income and all these things beyond, the soft stuff and all these things that we want to achieve, is we want to increase the amount of profit and grow the business that way. Yeah.
Is it different for you, Alea, especially because you work with children? Is it any different?
So I think I have a really interesting experience in that with the samosa company Wow Eats, it's a traditional product-driven company. And then on the other hand, I sit in a creative business, which is quite an unusual business structure, which we're kind of figuring out as we go along. I would say for the samosa business, scale has been fundamental in terms of revenue and just like keeping ourselves going month to month. If you're not able to meet your costs and bring in a profit, why are you in that business? So scale becomes essential. I would say for the Lamb Sisterhood, I actually think on the one hand, when I think about scale, I think about audience numbers, and I think about how do we get our stories to as many children and people who are hungry for them. But at the same time, I will say we did, I think, have conversations early on in the business about this maybe is not the moment to scale. And there's been a lot of pressure to scale quickly. And I think a lot of that pressure comes from other industries in which they say, okay, this is the moment, now you need to do the shh. And for us, we were very intentional about the importance of going deep first and creating really strong foundations and spending a lot of time on the actual product before we now look at strategies to scale. So I think the timing of scale is also really crucial, and especially in terms of what industry you belong to.
And you bring about a crucial question. Then how do you know when it's time to scale? So for you said it wasn't time yet, even though there was pressure perhaps from partners you're working with or other voices within the industry. But you said as a Lamb Sisterhood, let's first focus on the product, making sure it's the right, it's designed well, and then figure out scale. Yeah. So Zain, when does an SME like you get to know when is the right time to scale?
I'd say some parts of how we scaled were very intentional and some were accidental, in that we were trying to solve a problem and it so happened that it meant scaling up. So for example, one of the things we're really passionate about is early literacy and making sure that kids have access to books with diverse representation and things that we were not seeing in stores. So initially, how we wanted to solve that problem is shopping and doing a lot of like thrifting and bringing in books and a lot of pre-loved books, and people could purchase these either number one at like markets and expos and things like that, or the second way was through an Instagram page where weekly we'd post pictures of the books and the contents and why this is really great for their development and blah blah blah. The problem with that is, being that we were a very small team, even back then you say we, it was me. I'm so used to using my other email saying accounts will get back to you, and then going to anyway. So the problem at that time was it just was not sustainable to do the shopping, to manage the page, to do the making sure that people get their deliveries and things like that. So what I ended up doing is switching to like a subscription model and more of a membership. So we started our book subscription service where you get 2 books a month curated specifically for your child, and we get to know them and send them like a book that is based on their interests and something else that is something new, introducing them to something new. So that in that sense, it was killing because one, I reduced a lot of my costs, photography, sijui nini, moving around, and 2, even that decision making was easier because I'm making that decision on what books you're getting. And then this was like digital scaling in that we now introduced our Storytime podcast. So in that instance, it was to solve a problem. That's kind of when, if there's a problem that or a need you're not meeting, I think that's when I tend to try and brainstorm whether it's time to scale and what that might look like. In other instances, it's maybe from outside where we would know that there's a specific need, again, like to our PlayPod, where there's a demand and we know we've already set up systems, we have the right team, we've invested in training, then that's when I'd know it's the right time because it is already a proven concept, yeah.
For Mark, you sit in this beautiful place where you have the ability to design, to build, to lead strategy, to oversee operations. Having worked with several companies and even now being a co-founder, director at BSA, what do you think was that decision that shifted your, the trajectory, figuring out now it's time to scale?
That's a very loaded question. I'd say for any business person, as you're starting out, you probably have an idea that you want to take to market. You don't know whether it's going to succeed or not, but you hope that it does. And usually when you take your product to market, you meet the first group of people who we typically call early adopters. Yeah. So these are the people who they see initial value in your product in its current state before it is perfect. And it's usually good to work with them. So like in the earlier session, we were saying, how often do you talk to your customers? Do you really understand why they choose to buy from you and probably not somebody else? And I think now when the value proposition is clear and the brand promise is clear. So the way I like to describe a brand promise is, for example, like if this is Converge, yeah? And there are a number of promises that Converge can make to its audiences. So it could be community, it could be the ability to be able to learn how to tell good stories and other things. So sometimes they can say, you'll come, you'll get a meal, a very tasty meal, you'll network and meet people, and then we'll also show you how to tell good stories. So Converge can fail at everything else, but when it comes to telling good stories, that probably needs to be the brand promise that they can know that they will consistently deliver regardless of what's happening. So I think as a founder, for me, in the different companies that I've been with, and even when I was doing my own consultancy, is trying first to understand from your early adopters, what is that thing that they, if you were to fail in, then you'd probably lose that business altogether. So I think once that you've been able to kind of like put a pin on that, then it's probably the right time to start thinking about scale. So like Ale had mentioned, you need to fix first, and then I think now when the value is clear, then you can grow the business. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So for this conversation, we're focusing on digital strategies to scale. And from the very beginning, the morning, we looked at how this is possible or the different pathways. And one is the use of digital tools. I think Mark was here and telling us about his brand and how he's leveraging digital tools to actually be able to scale. Then we also heard about the use or the pathway that uses communities, and we learned that from Patricia, that it's you can be able to use strong communities to actually grow. And then the strategic partnerships, we'll be hearing more on that. And then also there's the place of storytelling. So I think Alia and Zain, you use a lot of storytelling. So maybe you can give us an idea of how you use storytelling to attract the right customers in your businesses. Maybe we can start with Zain. Zain, by the way, as I started baking because of the videos. Because of the videos you post online. But what I like about it is because you bake with your children and they're, it just looks amazing. So I thought, well, I should try this with my son as well. Yeah, but tell us about storytelling and how it has helped you attract the right customers.
Storytelling has been the main vehicle for what we've been trying to do. I had my kids. I was supposed to be the fun aunt, by the way. I was not supposed to have children. Now, my whole life revolves around my two and other people's children and childhood and everything. So when you have kids, and Patricia mentioned the crisis that is loneliness. Motherhood is probably one of the lonelier journeys you'll be on. It's very gradually isolating. So I wanted to find community, and I wanted to find a village, and I wanted to bounce ideas off people, wanted to be able to vent. So I opened a page where I do that. And the more I learned about early childhood and how important it is and how critical it is, it was crazy to me that there are not more conversations happening around it. And I didn't, so the storytelling was more to be an outlet and to be able to connect, because in terms of finding information, Google was available, websites were available. So that wasn't the point, although most of the information I was finding was not relevant to this market, because, my child is not going to get red cheeks when he's teething, he's black. But so I wanted to find communities that were relevant, that made sense. So I started by sharing my own story and welcoming other people to share theirs. And that's been the main way we've grown our audiences with other parents. And because of the nature of what we do, which is family, childhood, trust is such a big factor. And for people to be able to trust you, there has to be some degree of vulnerability, authenticity around it. So yeah, storytelling, and it was free. And it was COVID, and I had that time. So it was just one of the best ways to start growing that side of things.
What's been your experience, Alea, with storytelling?
I mean, first, just to say, Zain, you have enabled me to be a fun aunt, because I encountered Playroom in... That's okay. I'm very curious. So storytelling. Well, again, okay. So maybe I'll start with Wow Eats. I'll try and do this quickly. Wow Eats is, I come from a lineage of samosa makers. My father, my grandfather, quite possibly my great-grandfather. And when Imperial Bank collapsed, our family lost everything except the roof over our head and the 1,000 bob shilling in our wallet. And for a couple of years, we kind of tried to survive as well as we could, but it became clearer and clearer that we needed to do something. This money was not coming back. We had to figure out what we were going to do. And essentially, we decided, well, let's go back to doing the thing we know how to do, which is make samosas. And it's a much longer story than that. But December 2019, it was a slow internet day, serendipitously. I wrote down a long Twitter thread about my family's story. It was called 100 Years of Samosas, the tale of, I can't even remember what it is, but a death under fishy circumstances, an orange Volkswagen, and starting over again and again. And over the course of that Twitter thread, I told the story of my family's history. And at the end of the thread, I said, we're going back to the thing that we know how to do best, which is make samosas. If you'd like a box of samosas, slip into my DMs. And then I closed the thread, and my mom and I were like, we wonder what it'll take to sell 1,000 samosas. Let's just see if there's even a thing here. And off we went for a walk. And we came back from the walk, and my DMs were bursting at the seams. And we had already booked over 1,000 samosas and spent the next 5 days literally 20 hours a day, making samosas, frying samosas, delivering samosas. And what I think really happened was, it was a slow internet day. The algorithms were still allowing, long threads to be in people's viewpoint. And people just connected to this story of falling down and picking yourself up again, and falling down and picking yourself up again. I mean, it's both universal, but also intrinsically Kenyan. And so telling that story is what created the business Wow Eats. What happened then, which was really beautiful, is this community formed around kind of this story that we're invested in. Right, so you guys have formed a business, so now what? Where can we get these samosas? And we started then over time making experimental samosas and co-creating with our audience. So in fact, the most controversial samosa is the jahe samosa. We were dared on Twitter to make a jahe samosa. It took us 9 months. And lots of feedback from people on Twitter being like, you need to boil it with carrots. You need to use matoke. You need to do this. And 9 months later, and we would storytell through the process of it. So I would share, pictures of the disasters and, kind of also look into the history of the samosa, and found that in the context of this particular business, what people were really connecting to in the storytelling was, one, they were just interested in kind of the process. So, what does it take to make a blueberry samosa? They were interested in the co-creation element of it, and also in kind of the historical stuff, the ways in which samosa has become a container of identity. The fact that samosas have traveled, every country that has samosas thinks they're the ones who created it. No, it came from then Persia and traveled down. So storytelling became the thing that people really connected to with the product. This was right at the beginning. And then that story has found its way on stage. 100 Years of Samosas has found its way as a stage show, and it continues to be kind of embedded in, I think, the DNA of Wow Eats, so to speak. In terms of the Lamb Sisterhood, what's so gorgeous is story is our product. So the Lamb Sisterhood formed when myself and my two partners, Laura Kumbo, who's here, give us a wave, Laura, and Anne Mora, and Wilma's at the back there also with the Lamb Sisterhood. In 2018, we put together a stage show called Brazen with Too Early for Birds, telling the stories of brazen Kenyan women from history. And the thing that we were tapping into was a hunger for ourselves around who were the women that came before us, and what were the stories that made them who they were. I think if 2017, 2018 felt like a particularly difficult time to be a woman in Kenya, there were very high levels of femicide. The My Dress, My Choice movement was going on. And we remember thinking, how did the women before us do this? How did they deal, what were they dealing with? What were their betrayals? Where were they finding joy? We wanted to know about their lusts and their griefs and all the complexity, right? And so that's what led to Brazen. And when we did Brazen, we discovered there was such a hunger for these kinds of stories. And that's how we came together as the Lamb Sisterhood, to make stories for African women who feel seen, heard, and beloved. But then the question came around is okay, so what does a business look like that does this? So we spent a little bit of time thinking, what are our business arms? And we have 3 arms. We tell our own original stories, where stories are the product. We teach storytelling, and we tailor, so we make stories for other people. How storytelling fits into all of this is we've discovered in the commercial arm, when we tell our stories, that's what attracts the most clients. So people will see us on stage, or they'll experience like Cabrazen, the audio stories where we tell stories of brazen African women reimagined for little ones, and they'll say, we want that for ourselves. And so that has been the biggest strength that we found.
Awesome. All right. Njahe samosas, anyone? Are we curious enough? Yeah. Said this 2 orders. 2 orders of 1,000. What? You're behaving like you're in an auction. All right. So we've had about storytelling. We've talked about digital tools. We've talked about communities. Let's talk about partnerships. And maybe, Mark, you can help us get a clearer picture on how can we leverage partnerships to scale. What are great partnerships you've seen, especially in the local market? And speak to how we can use partnerships to scale.
Yeah, I'm getting the hard questions, eh? So partnerships. I'd say all partnerships are strategic in a business. Yeah. So there's the things that you're doing internally. So that's kind of like your production, your operations, your marketing. But then sometimes when you want to scale, it means you probably need somebody who has more muscle than you do, who can open doors that probably would take you years to open yourself. Maybe if I was just to look at examples like when I was working at Moringa School, so we had a challenge where at that time the kind of tech courses we were offering were still not yet accredited by the Ministry of Education. So parents were finding it hard to actually go out and fork the 200,000 for a 6-month course for a certificate that's not accredited. Students, they were really convinced of the value because tech was something that was coming up and was emerging. So there was a lot of interest around learning how to code. So around that, so the idea was, how do we get them now to actually convince their parents that this is a worthy investment? And sometimes you'd even find students who would tell their parents that they don't want to go to campus, they want to go straight into Moringa School. So we started having partnerships with employer partners, because the way to demonstrate the value of the certificate itself or the learnings that you've undergone is if your parent knows that if you go through this course, then you've ended up with a job. So that's how we started engaging some corporate partners, where we would source for like projects. So for example, like if you have a project that needed an element of technology to solve, and then we give that to our students, and those ones who performed quite well would actually find employment. So later on, we introduced something called employment rate, which is a metric that we started to measure, where you find like if 100 people have gone through the course, then 85% employment rate within 6 months. So suddenly parents now started seeing that this course might actually have value. So by the time I was joining Moringa, I think we were doing around 210 students per year. And as we continue to build on the partnerships, I think the biggest one that we got was with the Safaricom Digital Academy. And it was a strategic play, because when the leadership was changing, Safaricom was also starting to implement a digital strategy. So actually guys were being asked to reapply for their jobs afresh. So during that period, we also positioned ourselves as a corporate training entity. And in so doing, we were able to kind of like lock, like, let's say like a 2-year contract with them. And they became like a long-term partner. So by the time we were leaving, I think we had moved from 200 students to 2,300. And that's within a span of 3 years. So yeah, so it's looking to see in your business, whether it's marketing, whether it's product, whether it's distribution, leadership and culture and strategy, trying to see which of those problems or those operational areas where if you were to get support from somebody who's has the muscles will unlock the most growth for you. So I think those are the kind of partnerships that you should look for. Definitely
find somebody who's willing to let you stand on their shoulders, right? Awesome. So we had earlier today that there's a lot you can do with 1,000 shillings, and it can get you a lot of mileage, and then there's a lot you can do with 1 million and it doesn't give you much, right? Do you remember that when Sed was saying there's a lot you can do with 1,000? Yeah. But then there's times you have zero budget. True or not true? How many of us can tell us without lying you have a marketing budget? It is there. You have it put aside somewhere. Let me see those hands. Ish. That hand is like this. All right. It's in the works. So maybe Zain, you can tell us, because you're saying one time you have an email that says finance will get in touch, and then you move to the other, you open the other account. What are some low-cost or no-cost growth strategies that have worked for you and could help other small businesses as they seek to scale?
Okay, for me, number one, making use of as many free tools as possible. There are so many available right now. Said used to joke that just pay for Canva. At this point, they'll shut you out because you have exploited them till the very last drop. Like the things that come out of Canva and I've not paid for it are crazy now. Okay, I've said doing subscriptions and paying now. But like leveraging AI, leveraging even like the Google Sheets and whatnot, there's a lot of ways you can automate that will free up time and space for you to be able to grow the business. The other thing for me, especially, it's also thinking in the future. So being able to plan to scale further down. So for example, in our industry, the care economy and early childhood has become a really big conversation globally. And I want to be not just profitable now, but right now I'm in the intersection of like advocacy, digital storytelling, and delivering service. So I'd like down the line to be able to be positioned for policy opportunities, grants, investments, things like that. So being able to plan that further down is really important. And then the other thing I've found, maybe it's the nature of our industry, but in reinvesting in the community that I'm creating, that if I have a small budget, am I going to spend it outside of us, or am I going to find a way to nurture this community? Because for me, what I learned and what I kind of have always known is that a new family joining our community or our village is not just added revenue, it's added value, because now when Lulu has joined our community, she has more access to support from more parents. The nannies have more opportunities for peer learning. The kids have richer play. So growing my community is actually, to an extent, that is the product, and keeping them happy means and for the we ran our first ad ever this week. Because I would yes. We ran our first ad ever this week, but the entire time it has been referrals, members of the community. Everyone within knows each other, and it just speaks to the power of one, building that trust. And when you access one parent, knowing that you're not accessing one parent, you're accessing the mom in a mom's group with 2,000 moms. So if someone says, is there something in Kilimani for such and such, she's able to do it. So for me, the thing has been really understanding what my customers are looking for. Customers is so weird. My community is looking for, and then looking for cost-effective ways to nurture them. So even in our group, we have once a month parents meet. I know it's not for anything other. The meeting is supposed to be us discussing. We do painting, we play. We are really big on play. 50% of my job is playing, 50% is convincing people play is serious business. But during those monthly meetups with these parents who already pay to bring their kids where they come, it's supposed to be where we discuss how to improve our space. And we never do. People want to sit, chat, vent, paint. Oh, the last time I made a bracelet has been so long, because now I get to understand the value they are getting is that community. So now I reinvest in giving them that feeling. Yeah.
And for Leah, I know you told us a lot about the storytelling you did around Wow Eats. Any other examples, like how do you grow with zero budget? Yeah,
I mean, we really did have zero budget. I think two things have really worked for us. One is sampling as many opportunities as you can to get people to try your product. We have a fantastic product. We have something like, I think, 15 different flavors of samosas, from like chicken tikka. Can you see I'm doing a sales pitch? Chicken tikka samosas and gluten-free. And really, you can tell people about the thing, but until they try it, when they try it, if they like it, you've got a customer. If they like it and they can afford it, you've got a customer, right? So we would do farmers markets, we would do school markets, we would do, like, even if I was performing at a stage show, we'd be like, can we, sell samosas there? So that has been really, really effective. Number two, and it gives you a chance to talk to people and find out, like, what is it that they like about it? What do they want? What don't they like? The second thing I would say, which has been kind of unusual and interesting for Wow Eats specifically, is how do we keep people engaged and interested? And so we would do a flavor of the month, an experimental flavor of the month every month. And that was like very low cost, and we would crowdsource. So we would get, my little nephew, it began with my little nephew. He's like, Masi, can you make me a blueberry samosa? And so I'd go online and be like, guys, what do you think would go well with blueberries? And people would then be interested and invested in this blueberry samosa. And when it goes to market, they're like, I want to try the blueberry samosa. Next month, what are they going to do next month? What are they going to do the month after that? We did that for a while until it became no longer sustainable, because then the question of scale came in. But it was a great way to bring, a big group in to begin with, and kind of intrigue and interest people and excite them. So that's what I would say for Wow Eats. For the Lamb Sisterhood, so much of what Zain was speaking really resonated, this idea of community. And I think in general, this idea of, like, what are the chances and opportunities for you to share yourself authentically? And looking for those opportunities then means that people who are looking for that can then find it and become part of your community. And so kind of connecting with other people, like I really would love to have, Cabrazen at Playroom, for example. That would be a partnership that I think could benefit both groups. We've worked with Yoto Audio Player. They do audio players, and we've got Cabrazen on there. Those are kind of low-cost strategies to get what's their problem, and then how can you be their solution is another low-cost strategy to get your work out there.
Yes, please.
I think one of the things that was like the big multiplier for us was partnerships. Because when I say there was zero, there was like a vision. There's a very clear idea of what we want, what we don't want, which made it very easy to identify other people who shared that same vision. So for example, before we had our own space with our events or the bookish play date. We had to do events because we didn't have a space where it could just be open throughout. So for like our bookish play date, I knew schools wanted to drive people into their spaces. I was not comfortable with saying, oh, go to Verge school, it's the best school, because I've not tried it and everything. But I can bring people to you. And what do I need? I need a space. I need a place that already has child size furniture that I don't have to buy and whatnot. So we would always barter and have something that is mutually beneficial. So like even Verge, their focus is like telling African stories and supporting African creators. Our podcast is specifically to get African stories out to kids. So there's that synergy. So being able to do that means being so clear on your vision that you can identify who would be easiest to partner with. The other thing that I realized is that we might take for granted, and even back in my years in marketing was, and you would beg clients for this, is like feedback, making sure that as much as possible you get reviews from people, because that buy-in from other people who've experienced your product, when if you can't do like sampling, someone else who's experienced your product being able to talk on your behalf. So like I take every opportunity to get feedback and to make sure that we build a database to be able to target and speak to the audience. So for example, for any of our services or our products, if you're coming for our book events, I have a form for that. If you're coming for this, I have a form for that. It's all pre-registration, so that if I have a new podcast episode, I'm not sending an email to someone who came for a play date. I'm sending to someone who's interested in books. So the conversion is higher. So I feel like there's the lowest hanging fruit is actually being able to talk to people who have already shown an interest in your stuff. And if someone is able to leave a review, most of the time we just need to ask, and then you use that to proof of concept for what you're offering. And the last one, is like membership, so anything subscription based, because the worst thing about small businesses is sometimes you can have months that look like this, but that allows you some buffer, because if someone is subscribing to something for a year or for 6 months or for a month, it gives you a lot of room and better cash flow to work with.
Lots of ideas there, communities, databases, engagement, like getting people to contribute to the flavor of the month or something like that. So there's a lot of strategies. Mark, we haven't left you out. So for a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to be on every platform, every channel. By the way, I failed the quiz there. The one that asked which is the most popular. What was that question? Social media, yeah. So I do I say?
Instagram.
Yeah, I said Instagram. The millennial that I am. So there's this tendency where we feel we want to be on every platform and every channel. And how do you decide what platforms to be on? And how do you decide which ones to let go of completely?
Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay, so take out your pens and paper. So I'm going to share a 3-point framework that I use for choosing marketing channels. The first one is brand promotion quality. And under brand promotion quality, you have alignment with corporate image. So let me give an example. How many are aware of Festive brand? Festive. The bread, yeah. You are aware that they started a YouTube show with a certain influencer called Boina. You know of it, yeah? A couple, I think it was last year, they were trending for the wrong reasons. Do you know why? What happened? Mm-hmm. How many know Andrew Kibe? Kife, yeah? Yeah, so they invited Andrew Kibe to that show. And it went exactly. And it went left like very quickly, yeah? So under brand promotion quality, the first thing you have to look at is alignment with your corporate image. So if you're going for an influencer, if you're going for a specific media channel, so that is the difference between maybe promoting an influencer on OnlyFans versus maybe promoting an influencer on a platform like TikTok, yeah? So you have to ensure that whoever you decide or whichever channel you decide to be present in, it doesn't paint your brand in a wrong light. So, for example, if you are to see a brand like Apple advertising in matatus, it doesn't paint what they want, yeah. So that's what I mean by alignment with corporate image. Then the next thing is visibility. So that's still under brand promotion quality. So how possible or how easy is it for you to stand out when you're in that channel? Yeah. So some channels are very crowded nowadays, and especially like you said, it's all about algorithms now. Yeah, so sometimes you can invest a lot of time and money shooting like very good content, coming up with good scripts, and then you put it out to get 2 likes. Yeah, so visibility is also something you need to see if you can measure. And then under brand promotion quality, the last thing you need to look at is measurability. So is it possible for you to tell from this channel I was able to get 1 person, 2 people, 4 people? Yeah? So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is lead generation quality. So under lead generation quality, you still have lead generation quality. So are you able to get contacts or expressions of interest of people giving you permission to speak to them, either through a DM, or they've given you a call, they've walked to your office, they've subscribed to your newsletter. So essentially, the chance where the conversation can now, like Said was saying, we can move the conversation from digital to offline. Yeah, so that's lead generation quality. And then lead conversion probability. So how quality is that lead? Because sometimes even you post something up on Facebook or on Instagram, and you've clearly said this shoe is 10,000 shillings, yeah, but then somebody will still come and say, how much is the shoe? Yeah, so you have to also measure and see what's the likelihood that if I capture this lead from this channel, then the likelihood that I'm going to turn them into a customer is going to be very high. And then the last bucket is on costs. So cost, you can measure time. So how long will it take for me to put out my message in this channel? You can measure effort. Do I need to learn how to shoot videos and write good scripts like Seth does? Yeah. And then the last bit is how much does it actually cost in monetary terms? Essentially, once you have that framework, then you can list all the possible channels you can think of. So whether it's influencers, whether it's paid ads, whether it's newsletters, whether it's events like this one, you list all of them, and then you see how many of those boxes do they tick. So essentially, you want to prioritize the low-cost ones that tick most of the boxes. And also, in case where you're spending money, then you also have to ensure that the other boxes are also covered. Is that helpful?
Wasn't that amazing? You can build a matrix out of that, eh? Yes, no, and clear. Columns. Those ones who are drawing tables. You can come up with a matrix and tick based on which one makes sense, so that you decide which platform then to work with, yeah? Zain, as we wrap up, and I hope you have questions, right? You have questions for the panel? Okay. We'll be coming to you very shortly. Which platforms did you let go of? Which ones you were like, it's not working for me?
My problem is I've not committed to letting them go, but they are dead at the moment, or I revisit. Okay, it's something I really need to get better at. And someone asked the question of how do you know when it's time to hand over and let someone else do that side of it. Thank you for that question, because I feel like for us it's time. But the one that I really struggle with is Facebook, TikTok, TikTok, really great for reach. They are the ones who ask how much for the shoe. Where is this? When you've put all the details, and it takes a lot more time and effort. So yeah, TikTok and Facebook, I really struggle with. Oh, and LinkedIn, I need to be better at. So those ones.
For you, it's not so much that they're not working, but you need to have somebody else handle them? Or
yes, and but there's a very clear difference on which ones so far have been converting. But the only way to know is actually being consistent on there and then making that decision. But something like TikTok is great for, oh, this is so nice, but not so much conversion into the business. So it is the channel I would use mostly for awareness, just to be known that I exist, and then focus on the other channels for conversion.
So channels for brand visibility, then you have channels for conversions, and maybe even other channels for lead gen, depending on what you're putting out there. Yeah. Alea, are there platforms that have not worked for you and you've had to let go of?
Yeah, I mean, Wow Eats was born on Twitter. First from my kind of audience, and then the thing that really worked for us for a long time was having a WhatsApp community. So we would do regular broadcasts, and the broadcasts would just keep you kind of top of mind. We've never had any money to be able to pay for ads. So we've just found that if you're not putting money behind it, it just doesn't get seen. So Twitter's now a hellscape. So it doesn't feel appropriate to be talking about samosas whilst we're trying to fight for a revolution. So Twitter's quiet with Wow Eats. We're mostly on Instagram, and mostly it's just so that people, when they go, they see that we still exist and we're alive. But part of that has also been because now we've moved to retail, and that's been a scale question. And so we're really relying on retail to bring in our customers, and we've kind of focused all our effort on that and said we don't have the capacity right now to handle kind of online stuff. With the Lamb Sisterhood, what's been interesting is that more and more we found, one is that LinkedIn has been a place that we've been finding ourselves on a lot as the Lamb Sisterhood, especially when we share the process of making stories, give people an insight into what it takes to make a radio soap opera series in Uganda with a group of young women wanting to tell their stories. In sharing the process, we're attracting clients who are looking for these services. And then similarly, like, we're really focused on wanting to make the work and don't have the capacity really to market. So these are questions we've been asking ourselves. So the other channel that we've intentionally decided to focus on is a newsletter, MailChimp. So it's not a newsletter, it's called the Lamb Letter. You can subscribe if you like. I think it's bit.ly/Lamb Letter. And it's once a month we send out letters of love, light, and lessons from the 3 co-founders. And what we found is that that's for our community, and it's sharing ourselves in an authentic way that finds them where they are in their mailbox. They subscribe, so it's a thing that they want, and then it's easy for them to share onwards. And we're not dealing with the noise of Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. We're curious about TikTok. I'm a millennial, so I know nothing, and I'm also very addictive by nature, so I'm keeping away. But I think the question is intentionality and knowing that all of this takes a lot of effort. So the question is, like, is the effort paying off? Yeah.